The middle of three children, Charles Beatty Gill was born and raised in a working-class family outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was an accomplished student who was particularly gifted in math, as well as a talented athlete who played on the school football, hockey, baseball, and basketball teams. After graduating from high school in 1956, Chuck worked on a railroad for 18 months to earn money to attend Duquesne University, where he majored in economics. He married his high school sweetheart Gill during his junior year in college, and their first daughter Maureen was born 1 year later. Chuck's first job after graduation was with the IRS collecting back taxes from the less fortunate. Within 2 days, he realized that the job was not for him and quickly accepted a position with the Rural Electrification Administration in Washington, D.C. Armed with only a crib and a card table, Chuck, Gill, and baby Maureen arrived in Washington, D.C. to start their new life. And thankfully so. It was at the REA that Chuck became enthralled with the cooperative business model and developed his lifelong belief that co-ops are an essential part of the American way of doing business. Chuck first served as an operations field representative, visiting hundreds of electric co-ops and learning about their operations and their challenges. He quickly became a trusted advisor and the person to call when a co-op takeover attempt arose. Early on, he spent nearly 2 months in Maine knocking on the doors of co-op members and speaking at community meetings to stave off a takeover of a local co-op. In California, he used those same skills in several takeover attempts. These efforts came at considerable personal sacrifice, as Chuck was unable to see his children and wife for extended periods of time. His daughters Maureen and Lynn were both toddlers at the time, and his son Charles was born just 2 weeks prior to him leaving for Maine. His daughters Valerie and Elizabeth were born in 1967 and 1969, respectively. In 1969, Chuck won a presidential fellowship through the University of Maryland and took a 1-year leave of absence from the REA to pursue a master's degree in economics. He returned in 1970, just as negotiations were beginning between the REA and the newly forming National Rural Utilities Cooperative Finance Corporation. Chuck was tapped to lead the negotiations. He was clearly up to the task, helping to design some of the fundamental underpinnings that have served CFC so well over the years. Thus, it was not much of a surprise in 1972 when Chuck was asked to join the growing CFC staff. As its borrowers' operations officer, he was in charge of member relations between CFC and its electric cooperative members. He also served on the Capital Credit Study Committee and authored the report and recommendations that were utilized for the next 30 years. In 1978, Chuck was named Deputy Governor of CFC and became its governor the following year. Under his leadership, CFC began retiring capital credits to its members, introduced the long-term variable rate program, and created the Associate Loan Program. The latter of these innovations allowed electric co-ops to get involved in new businesses such as satellite TV, propane and natural gas subsidiaries, water and wastewater projects, and other economic development ventures to meet the needs of their communities. But perhaps the most important thing that Chuck did as CFC's chief executive was to look beyond his own organization for ways to improve lives. From 1981 through 1987, his visionary leadership helped create 3 essential organizations that have had a dramatic impact on cooperative development and rural America. In 1981, he created the National Cooperative Services Corporation to help generation and transmission co-ops capitalize on opportunities provided by new tax legislation. Today, the organization provides specialized financial services to the electric cooperative network. In 1986, Chuck joined Bob Berglund in creating the National Rural Telecommunications Cooperative to help bridge the growing technology gap between rural and urban America. Chuck urged the CFC board to provide essential financial support for the new venture and today NRTC is a lead player in providing technology and information services to electric and telephone cooperatives throughout rural America. 1 year later, Chuck created the Rural Telephone Finance Cooperative to enable rural telephone companies to enter new business lines to benefit consumers and help revitalize their local communities. Throughout all of these incredible innovations, Chuck continued to fight for cooperatives experiencing threats from for-profit utilities. He devised the CFC Cooperative System Integrity Fund to help defray the costs of enormous legal and public relations efforts. Within its first 20 years, more than $12 million has been dispensed to help co-ops face territorial battles. After 16 years of service as its governor, Chuck retired from CFC in 1995. Even in retirement, he remains committed to the utility industry and continues to serve on corporate boards of directors, including the National Exchange Carriers Association. He is also committed to traveling with his wife, playing golf, and spending time with his 12 grandchildren. All of these are luxuries he richly deserves. Since his first days with the Rural Electrification Administration, Chuck Gill has devoted himself to improving lives. His innovative contributions to the nation's electric cooperative network have changed the face of rural America. His legacy is undeniable. For this, we salute and honor Chuck Gill with induction into the Cooperative Hall of Fame.